ever hear about hire car drivers like Winfield, Nali, Aku, Kochor, and Budzo? You ever hear about Sataku, Inshan, Patsy, Chigadwa? Why pass me, man? Don't smile with me. Me don't take shame face and shake Cockaby man hand. I is not a stranger. I is a born villager. I is an authentic BV man.
Okay, let's talk about some of the terms that came up that has had me laughing. The first one I got down here is Preggy. And then long engagement. And the Mabi bucket. And Munah. Let me talk, let me talk.
You know about teacher Louisa, who used to ride a Preggy? You know why they used to call she cornpole?
Let me talk.
You see, the Preggy is a bicycle. I know if you remember back in the days, you had a gent's bicycle and you had a lady's bicycle. Right. The gent's bicycle had a bar that you could tow somebody. The ladies didn't have that bar. It was just that V. And you had a Preggy, which I think from the word Preggy, it might have been designed for a pregnant woman because it was kind of hollowness, a kind of almost semicircular kind of shape to it. And I suppose that was giving space for a pregnant woman's tummy.
In the main frame.
Yeah. Well, the person who used to ride the Preggy, she was not pregnant, but she had some weight in front there, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So and you know, sometimes we talk. You see, this village got a spirit. And the spirit allows you to have fun, not in a denigrating way, not to put down anybody, but you just have fun. So when you see somebody who looked a bit different, you know, you would make fun. The tantalize started, right? And I guess in as much as the old people sometimes would pretend as though they were vexed, they would know they come up with the same kind of culture. But so in as much as sometimes you think you're getting a little punishment, there was quite a slack because sometimes you have to do one thing over and over and over again before somebody called you in for discipline. Right. You see?
But listen to this. There's a writing, I think Kimani Nahusi, he talks about names and naming. It's an African tradition. If you go to many parts of Africa, they give you name according to body parts, big head, big foot, you know, whatever your physical attributes are, they will give you a name or what your behaviors are. So it's a thing in the culture. So it is directly there. And so if foreigners come in, they might be unnerved by that. One of my friends at the University of Guam, he's a Caucasian man, and he went to Guyana. He worked with the Theater Guild and so on. And he said, he said, tell me something. You know, they call me boy in white boy in Guyana. And I just started laughing. And he said, what? He said, I was offended. I said, bye, look at you. You get in. I said, you in? You get name? You get name. So because you get name in, I said, what you offended about?
Well, you see, as well as the offense comes because in his culture, boy is used to degrade, used to be used to degrade the grown slave men.
The Africans.
Right. So they were always seen as boy because that was, so he felt, and that's like a clash right there of cultures.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But with this false name thing, it comes from a kind of familiarity and a fondness.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not that we're putting you down, but we are finding humor in your difference.
Right.
Yeah. And that in itself is a uniting thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And some of these guys in the villages with false names for years, you would even forget their real names.
Oh yes, the Buxton has a characteristic too. When I know this man named Joker, all my life named Joker. Me never know in England, France. Nice name, like that government name. But the name Joker fitty because he a Joker.
Exactly. Exactly. Like my mom, they call her, everybody knows her as baby. You know, it's not a real derogatory, like strange false name, but when people heard her real name, they're like, who are you talking about? I said, that's my mom's real name. But everybody knew her as baby because she was the last child for her mother. Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing I want to say about that, and this is going to go cross-culturally. This same bicycle thing. In Japan, they have a bicycle that has the carriage at the back. You can put, no, not the carriage at the back. They have a basket in the front, sorry, a basket that's hung in the front. So you can take this basket on the bicycle and you go to do your shopping. It's not something that you put on. You can actually buy a bicycle with this basket in the front. And it's called a mama chari. Mama chari, mama chariot. So it's a bicycle for women who go in and shopping. So this Preggy thing, if it's feminized, there's a kind of a link across culture. So I just want to drop that there.
You were talking about the long engagement. You know about Handel, who got the record for the longest engagement?
Yes.
You know, these are part of our village anecdotes that keep the culture alive. This guy, he got engaged to somebody. They were so much in love. But you know, normally engagement 3 months after or within a year, you marry. Well, when you see somebody engaged to you on this love affair going 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, now you got into old age and you're still engaged, right? So this was the reference. He had the longest engagement.
Yep.
And the Munah. You know about Munah?
Munah?
What he did in the coca? Well, in every culture, you would always find one of them, if you know what I mean. Some people got some mental challenges. Back in the day, we didn't see this thing as an illness. We said either the disgusting or the stupidity, right? We didn't see it as a legitimate illness, right? Well, this Munah was a guy who was not altogether there. He had some little challenges, mental challenges. He was not a madman, because back in the day when you hear a man got mental challenges, he got to be crazy, walking, pulling out his hair and all of that. But this man is just that his thinking was either too slow, right? Or he struggled. And so the coca, as you know, is that gate that you open to irrigate, to drain the village, or to bring in water, irrigate, drainage and irrigation. Well, Munah would go to the coca and use the coca as a bathroom.
Oh.
So that's what he did in the coca. And everybody would say, when anytime Munah goes to the coca, it's like he gone and do the thing. He gone and use it as a bathroom.
You see, thanks for that explanation, because rounding out the village, we have the mentally challenged.
Yes.
And other times you don't find that in the histories of villages or even countries. They talk about conquests and discoveries and great unions and politics, but in the social history of the village, we have our people with the challenges.
Yes.
And I look back and see people in my village that now I can say, oh, that person had Tourette's. Oh, that person gets schizophrenia. This person got showing paranoia, signs of paranoia, and things like that. And you say, you know, children basity or strippity or whatever. Maybe they're just they're not meeting their milestones, developmental milestones in terms of schooling. So you look and people get undone scap in school in the corner. Those things really hurt my heart now, because children didn't have to be stigmatized that way.
Exactly.
They're so learner. And it's a word and a blow, and they in the done scap in the corner and stuff like
Ridicule.
that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Or a lot of times some of the lashes that kids get, it didn't increase their learning in any kind of way. If anything, it made them shy away from learning and that kind of stuff. So it's actually, that's a good point that you bring up, Pauline, like shining the light on different type of mental either disorders or illness that we didn't quite understand, or people who are perfectly fine. And then one day, just as we call it, take off.
Yes.
You know,
that's another word. Yeah, they just take off.
Exactly. They just take off. And you know, you look back now that we're smarter in some sense, or wiser, or knowledgeable, we can name those things.
And you know, and aside from that, Kwesi, go ahead. I got to write. Let me write this down.
I was about to draw the attention to the fact that there is a wholeness in the village that this poem seems to present. And if we were to objectively examine the poem, especially we who passed through those times, we would realize that now with more information and that kind of stuff, we would approach life with a little more sympathy and understanding for people. You know, it's not a case of putting down somebody, but recognizing that there is something wrong, right? It could be an illness, either mental, emotional, physical, but we now would be able to recognize these things, and we would know that yes, in these modern days, you could get treatment for that thing, you could get cured of it, right? And then going back to the days of corporal punishment, that was a part of the school's code. That was a part of the code of education. Corporal punishment, that punishments were sometimes really, really not justified. Then we would understand that, you know, instead of flogging the child, we have to relate to the child in a way as to encourage the child. You know, we have to understand that this child really has a challenge, and not that the child is setting out to display certain behaviors because of rebelliousness. But because they have legitimate challenges.
And the fact that some what we recognize now is that each of us learn differently.
Look at that again.
Right? And this idea, there was only one technique of teaching in those days. And you'll find the educators who stand out, the teachers that we remember, are those teachers that taught differently from what was set out as the code in those days, that one way of teaching. Because a lot of times you go like, you know, some names might come up, you know, Teacher Abrams or whoever the case is. Is that somehow those teachers had a sense to know that you learn differently. So I'll teach you how you learn. I don't know if they know they were doing that, those teachers, but just the idea that all of us learn differently. And it's that realization that I find in those days, you know, we were all, teachers in those days were teaching with the knowledge they had at the time. I think that grace and ease we have to give the teachers too. They can only impart the knowledge and the experience they had at the time.
In addition, we also have to look at the legacies or the retentions that came down from being enslaved, because it was a whip on the back. You know? It came into the schools and this corporal punishment thing. So we have to really re-examine that. But as you said, looking at the poem, it offers so much. And for the person who's going to be using this poem for analysis of literature and so on, we're talking about themes and social concerns that emerge from I's a BV man. So we're looking at reading between the lines. We're looking at teasing out ideas just from words or from key terms in the poem. So we just had long engagement. Munah, one more thing. What Munah? Y'all know the song? Munah for center pong.
Oh yes. Munah for center pong.
Tell your mama something. Munah for center pong. Well, a Battlefield woman asked me to know the song. So I don't remember all the words. If y'all know the words, write down the words. But apparently, Munah was a fish. And this fish was so cheap because it been proper stink. It is most stinking fish you ever know. And so, Munah for center pong is a song, but there's another side to this Munah. Suppose somebody yourself them fish. You get me? Wink, wink.
Center pong.
Center pong. Wink, wink.
Oh Lord.
So that's the play on that. So when you say Munah, I say, oh, you got to tell a Munah story. But surprisingly,
this was a different Munah.
Yeah, so it depends on how the words resonate with you. Maybe in another culture, maybe Jamaican culture, this Munah is a whole different thing because we have words that we're shared across Caribbean culture, you know? Yeah, and they evoke different types of narratives. All right, so what else we got on the list? You know, there was one thing that we talked about. This is GAF, so y'all don't fret. GAF, let's go back and come forward. When we were talking about disabilities and stuff like that, ADHD came to my mind because when I was a kid, I never knew nobody get ADHD. And I'm thinking, in today's world, all these kids got ADHD and whatever else. What have been in Guyana? Is it that people didn't notice, or we just said a Badderayshun? Oh, that's a word, Badderayshun. Badderayshun is a child who is capricious, a child who kind of can't settle, mouthy, the mouth off, you know, seem to be hyperactive. Where were those kids and why were they diagnosed? I feel that maybe they were there and not diagnosed and they suffered through. If you were that kind of person in school life and suffered through, because my sister said she knew something was wrong. She said kids who were quiet and could settle quietly in their seats, she admired them. She said she couldn't. She said physically couldn't. And so this lady, Miss Rodney, used to either give her lashes or something and say, Darabed, why can't you sit down? Why can't you settle yourself? But she said to me, she said, no, as an adult, she said, I physically couldn't. She said, I used to be so longing to be like the other kids who settled and very, you know, well-behaved. She said, what's wrong with me? We can never be well-behaved. Every time a report came home, talkative and rude. Every report, but the actual story upon the thing, talkative and rude. But I'm telling this story because I am saying I didn't see ADHD, but she was telling me what she was feeling. And so later on in life, she had reason to check up and realize that she was, you know. So for whatever it's worth, I'm putting that out there. You guys, thoughts on that?
Yeah, like so many thoughts flash across my head at the same time. I had to like quiet myself to kind of say, but yeah, that's it.
I was also thinking that maybe because we used to run wild, we had pasture for tramp through, lot for walk through. You never go home straight. Even nowadays, even when I'm walking, I always looking for some off beaten path. We had to explore the neighborhood. We could play outside. When you see August month come, you play till you're sick. You go out in the morning, you got to come back before 6 o'clock be. When you come back, your foot white till to the knee. You play till you're exhausted. Bed through then your navel and your armpit. Your parents have to aisle you down for take out the bed through from behind your ears. You scratch like a crazy. I think those things maybe help to calm kids. But in school, you can run about outside, but then when you come to school now, that must have been a very difficult thing. But maybe the teachers who are listening to this in Guyana, like Westobi and so on, how did you relate to this new knowledge about ADHD? And with us kids in school, what did you see? How did you deal with that? Yeah. So what else is there? The Mabi bucket. For those who don't know what Mabi is a drink we make in Guyana. It's made from the bark. I hear they got a Mabi tree. It's bark really, and the bark is brown and curled up like cinnamon. Like you had cinnamon bark, sticks from a stick is a bark. And we would put this Mabi bark in hot water and we would make a drink. We would have it boil and set with cloves and so on. And then you would make this drink, but you sugar it up and stuff, and you have to set it until it becomes ripe.
Yeah.
How do I explain that in English, ripe?
So it's like maybe fermentation. It's like fermenting it almost.
maybe close to kombucha.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that, but not quite. But I like stale Mabi. I like when it's stinging. That's the best Mabi for me. But it has a slightly bitter taste. If you just make it, you can't drink it. You shouldn't drink it like that. Some people do. They drink it like snaps, but it's bitter. That is a drink across the culture. So you talk about the Mabi. We have our Mabi stories. Go, Kwesi.
Back in the day, we had these cake shops. You remember the cake shop? You had the grocery stores, you had the cake shops. The cake shops is where you would go to get a little beverage, a little drink, and of course, some kind of pastry. And sometimes you could have both a cake shop and a grocery together.
Yeah.
But then there were some shops, especially those that were close to schools, where they specialized in just selling snacks. And of course, Marby and pine drink and that kind of stuff, swank, you know, the lime juice and the lemon juice with a little sugar. These were popular drinks. So with the Marby, it was, at that time, I think it was somehow a middle range kind of drink between the swank, which was, you know, the ordinary thing you get at home. Your mom can always whip up some sugar water or swank. But the Marby was sold in the store. In the cake shops. So when you go there, they had the Marby buckets. And you buy back in the day was a cent Marby, Munah for cent a pound, Marby for cent a glass. Or a penny Marby. They'd break up the ice and put it, and then they pour the Marby in it, right? Well, of course, you know, village. You know, village life. Yes. Somebody broke a scandal saying that there were two shops close together. And somebody wanted to, you know, get all the sales. So somebody started a little scandal that somebody falls asleep over their Marby bucket.
And dribble it.
And the dribble goes into the bucket. So don't buy it from that. So that's the kind of thing, you know. All these little stories we hear in the village. But these were fun. These were fun stories, you know. They were fun stories, you know.
Buxton had stories like that too, because you hear, don't buy some from somebody, can they take the big foot and store the Marby?
Yes, or don't buy black pudding because they scrape the foot just with the black pudding knife and all. Oh Lord!
Yeah, because they get cocoa bear. They get cocoa bear. They get Junjuh and cocoa bear. Yeah, cocoa bear. Cocoa bear is one. Like when you get arthritic, I think.
Leprosy.
Yeah. Leprosy?
Yeah. That was. Because they used to deform the fingers, right, and the toes.
Yep.
So the fingers were deformed because they had a lady that used to call she Dina Cocobe.
Yes.
And she had no leprosy. Dina had no leprosy, but Dina's hands were kind of deformed. I think she had a disability, like some kind of deformation of her limbs, his hand, her feet. There's something a little bit off about her, but she was a nice lady. So, and then they get Junjuh. Junjuh is like what? Junjuh is when you get rash, no?
Yeah, rash. Something with and rash in your mouth and
Kira. That is Kira, girl.
No, Kira is a different thing. Kira is the cut to the side.
Yeah. It used to be the white.
White mouth.
But Junjuh used to be the
Junjuh is something is like sore on your mouth and your gums and sore. Yeah.
So you get Kira or Kier.
Gum disease, Junjuh.
Yes, and Junjuh. Somehow, man, I targeting when I write the thing. My understanding of Junjuh, when you get rash and thing and so. And when you get Junjuh, you gotta go mommy fifi forget the money bush. Right?
Oh, yes. You gotta take a wash with bush.
Yes, and then they say, no, when you get Junjuh now, you got to throw away the Junjuh water properly. So sometimes they say, don't walk in people's yard because then throw away the cocoa bear water and then Junjuh water. And then you walk and you get them on your foot. So next year, then get them diabetic also. And they must say, people get Junjuh.
Yes.
Yes. So those are the kinds of themes that come out. And notice as we're talking, the story gives more stories. So as we tell, those of you who are listening and you hear us tell these stories, and I'm like that. So people, maybe when I was studying and so on, they say, how is it she talking like this? But they don't know I am speaking from a cultural way of doing and storytelling, that our stories are not parallel. They don't have this just one narrative arc. We have many narrative arcs and rhizomes. Tributaries and roots. So we can pick up this one thing. We start with a word, we get a story, and a story besides story, story begets story, and it beget. So that's what we're looking at here. So if you're going to look at Kwesi's story, and he's going from person to person to person, each one of those people have a story and many stories. So you're looking at a corollary of stories that broadens a tapestry that is colorful, not just with words, but with meaning and people and pace and spaces, food, ways of talking, so many things. Yeah.
And to go back a bit, when we were talking about Isa BV man earlier, and why people are not the way they were when we were growing up. And I think it ties back to what you were just saying, Pauline, about the telling of stories. And they're not just because these stories were told back then. And I think the stories are not being told now the same way. So people, the same, it's like we almost like what we're doing now is very important. What you're doing on your platform, Pauline, is very important, because what you're doing is keeping those stories alive and bringing people like Kwesi talking about, I'm a BV man, is keeping that story, that creating, as you said, a tapestry and that path for the next generation. But I think for some time, those stories weren't being told anymore. A different kind of story is being told. So I don't know if the tapestry for a little bit got a little bit frayed, and now we're building it back again. And I might be wrong, but
thanks for that, Marlies. The way I see it is something called synergy.
Yeah,
where things go and change. We have to expect change because growth is change. We can look back with fondness to back in those days, but those days weren't always fun.
No.
And we can't. I'm not telling these stories to recreate the past. I'm telling stories to account for, be responsible. To tell those stories, and we all don't tell them in the same way. We should not tell them in the same way. We all experience them different way, a different way. The world we live in, the world I live in, the way I see my world, the way I even see green, the way I construct the world for me, it's not the way you do. I'm pretty sure you see the world different. So we all, there's a Buxton that you live in and you make that is not the same as somebody else. It's a BV that Kwesi creates that is not the same for somebody else. So we have to be careful that we don't look for sameness. Uniformity, because there was never any uniformity.
No.
Every generation. I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm just putting this out there. That we can romanticize the past, and it was never romantic. And every generation thinks that the last generation didn't do a good job. So but maybe just by doing that, we keep we do like what happens with the oyster that's standing there. We dig it until we become this thing. Yeah.
I think what happens, we who are looking at it from this angle, and all of us in some foreign country right now looking into Guyana in the past, things impact the culture.
Yeah.
You see, and the focus changes, people's focus change. And when the focus change, it seems as though we have lost the culture. We don't lose the culture. It gets suppressed.
Yes.
Because look what's happening in Guyana now. Theater. This is a new kind of theater. With a new kind of dynamism. These are new people coming up. And to me now, they are bringing a modern spin to these very stories we are talking about. They might not have experienced it the same way we experienced it, but hearing from us and adding what they're experiencing is a different quality and a different level to which the whole narrative goes. You see? So the culture is being revolutionized. It's not that we are losing it. But as times change, the culture will change. It would take a little bit of change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm most impressed now to see, you see, back in my day, I wanted to be an actor, but my parents would tell me, man, you don't want to be any actor. You don't want to do entertainment. You don't want to get into the theater because it pays no money. And when your family come, you will, oh man, they gave me every explanation to get out.
Right.
But you know, when you feel something within you, it's tough to kill it. You can't murder it. It actually energizes you. Right? So good. I had gone to a certain height in the theater. And then because of some cultural challenges, political challenges, social challenges, migration, took its toll on Guyana. So people like us, we left.
Right.
And when we left, we would have thought, oh my God, this is quite a hollow we've created. What's going to happen? But those little ones who are coming up, they are, like you're saying, they are not seeing the BB I saw, but they're just as impressed by the BB that confronts them. And out of that BB now, new stories are born.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it is that when their stories and my stories come together, they're seeing something that gives them a broader perspective of life. And they're relating to it at a higher level.
Right.
I'm seeing this thing happening in Guyana right now. When I look at the theater, they may not have the support that we think they ought to have. But these people are still determined to do what they know they're called to do. And that's what keeps the culture going. Yeah.
So Kwesi, what I hear you say there isn't a loss. There's an embodiment that's going on. It's in you, because I remember telling a friend of mine about a work I was doing, and I said, but you know, it's lost. I was so disappointed. I was telling him, it's lost. And he said, who say it lost? I said, and then, he said, y'all, we're talking about it and lost. People got the story and they got it in pieces. And I said, right, Bob, we as Guyanese and villagers and so on, we all have story. That's why this thing named What the Story Say. And I ask what this story say, because it makes us a presumption that we all have story. What the story say. And so we all have story, but where is the story? It's embodied. We all carry the story. And if we carry the story in our bodies, in our memory, in our DNA, in our cellular level, because our bodies carry stories too, those traumas and so on, they carry stories. And so when we carry the story, like when you tell the story, no, my body feel alive, you know, it's something is happening. So if we're carrying stories, then we have multiple types and kinds of stories. So we will have new kinds of stories depending on the era, the age, geographies, movement across landscapes, because there was a time in Guyana when we couldn't travel, regular people couldn't travel, and things like that. And so if we carry the stories, it's a good thing, but there's a caution, because when bodies carry stories, bodies perish. Yeah. And when bodies perish, like you said, the last part of your poem, that Kwesi, I'm going to ask you to read it again. When your bodies perish, then what? Then what? What is the last stanza in your poem there? What you say?
What it says, hold on. It says, I is a BV man. I don't care what nobody said. When it's time for bury me, my bones going back right there.
So the bones going back right there. And guess what? He ain't going back there just so. He joined all of us. He emptied the stories that he has and gave them to us. That's why this platform is here. And for those of you who want to use this poem in your schools and so on, write to Kwesi Oginga. What is your email address?
Pastor Kwesi Oginga at yahoo.com.
Right. And he can get you books for your libraries and for your classrooms. It's time we read our own stories. When I was growing up, I used to used to have to do literary analysis and memorize the Song of the Banana Man. Tourists wiping his face, met me in Golden Grove Marketplace. I memorized the poem, I can recite the poem.
Yeah.
It's somebody write the poem. So I want to hear Isa Beefy Man in schools.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm pushing these types of things. So if you don't know where to get material for literary analysis and so on, Isa Beefy Man got it.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I would like to hear that the works of Guyanese is being recognized, accepted, and honored by Guyanese.
Yeah.
The schools in Guyana. Because make no mistake, these are our stories. When I was growing up, I knew British stories. I knew European stories. They had absolutely no meaning to me. I never really met Humpty Dumpty.
And it's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Right?
And you know, the funny thing about it,
Humpty Dumpty.
yeah, it's not until I got a certain age that I realized that there were stories all around me that I could relate to for inspiration.
But they weren't taught.
In crafting my life and putting my focus in the direction. It was happening all around me. And I guess it's out of that I began to write, because I think I began to write since I was pretty young, 15 years or so. And I have over 200 manuscripts. But Pauline, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Today, I think I've just got about 13 books I published. But what I'm trying to say is that lots of Guyanese have stories to tell. And the stories that we tell will help us to develop and to shape a new future for that country. You know,
right.
When we speak from our hearts, we are speaking about what we recognize to be important in the culture.
Yeah.
We are speaking about what is missing.
Yeah.
We are speaking about what we think we have the capacity to construct so that that culture can go to a higher level and people can enjoy life together. Sometimes when we talk about racial divisions. This is something to write about. How do we correct it? You see, and where does the correction begin? If we can't begin in the schools with the stories, come on, man, tell me where.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see Guyanese, the schools, the education system, looking more into looking for Guyanese works and having the children learn about themselves through the way the spirit of the country expresses itself.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that I look forward to.
Yeah. Marlies?
And picking up on that, I think that also, it's kind of like also saying, feel the vibration of your environment, of the country, because we're also, we're very expressive people, and dance, despite what cultural niche you're in, dance is something that is vibration, and music is something that we feel within us and causes us to move. And same thing with the spoken words and telling story, because I remember as a child growing up, where you'll gather around the foot of your elders and they'll tell you stories, or even as kids, you sit around on moonlit nights and you tell stories, a different trajectory. But to me, what I'm hearing is that your stories gives the vibration, the heartbeat of a community, of a people. So it's important for that vibration to reverberate through the schools by hearing the stories of the people, by the people, I think.
Yeah. So there you have it, people. You have many reasons to have stories and storytelling in whatever form. Stories soothe, stories calm, stories mend, stories entertain. You can use them for chiding, for cautioning, for advice, for recommendation, for so many things. No matter what you're going through in life, stories they have a part to play in our life and living. So I say, have at it, and thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, follow, share, and hang with the program. We have more coming. All right.
Awesome.